This is way too many peaches for a 2-year-old peach tree, so what to do? That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here today at the end of March in 2022. So if you guys have been following us along, you know that we have over 170 fruit trees here on this newly establishing desert farm. One of the things we love to grow here is peaches, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now I'm standing here inside the open center of one of our Florida Prince peach trees. Now these trees are right at about 2 years old. When we planted them, they were the size of one of these small branches, and after 2 years, these guys are starting to produce for us. This is the very first tree that we planted here on the farm, and for the first year, we don't let these fruit at all. Once we get into the second year, we prune real heavy, and then what we need to do is come back and make sure that we're not overproductive on the tree. Now you can see on some of these branches, I have probably anywhere from 15 to 20 small peaches on 12 to 18 inches of branch space. That's definitely a problem because this tree, although it does have some good scaffolding and some ability to hold weight, it definitely can't hold this much. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you how we come back, we thin out these peach trees to make sure that we're going to have nice large fruit that, more importantly, tastes amazing. So these trees started setting these fruit about 3 to 4 weeks ago. So each of these fruits, the larger ones are about the diameter of a quarter, and we've had some good storms, some windstorms come through, so we know that the tree has shaken loose any of the fruit that it wants to give up on its own. Now it's going to try to hold on to all of this fruit, and that's a problem. So we're about 45 days or so from our first harvest, so about right in the middle of the time frame from fruit set until harvest is when we come through and we start to thin. Now as far as choosing which fruit we're going to thin, the first thing I'm looking for is any fruit that has damage. You can see this piece of fruit right here. I don't know if it was a bird or some type of bug that started to munch on it a little bit, but you can see it definitely has damage. So that's going to be the first fruit that I'm going to remove. So I have another piece of fruit here that's damaged. I'm going to go ahead and take that off. Now, what I do is I just twist ever so slightly as I'm pulling, so that all I'm doing is pulling off just the fruit. Now looking again, I've got another one here that's got a peck mark in it, so we're going to go ahead and lose that one. And then I have one on the back side of the branch here, down at the bottom, that's really, really small and a little misshapen, so I'm going to go ahead and take that one off. I have 4 pieces of fruit right here, and you can see already this branch is starting to bend. So I know that I need to take at least 2 more of these out, and because I know that I need to have some space between each one of my pieces of fruit as they ripen to get, again, about the size of a baseball, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the 2 middle fruits off of this branch. Okay, so this is what I've thinned off of this one branch. I have 7 small pieces of fruit in my hand here, and I have 2 pieces of fruit left on the branch. Now, whether or not this is gonna have to be reduced down even further, I don't know yet. We'll see how these 2 pieces of fruit develop and if we have any issues. But that'll give you an idea of just how much you need to thin. You can see I have a whole lot of fruit right in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and get to work doing the same thing as I did with that branch in through this area right here to give you an idea of just how aggressive you need to be with these fruit. So as I'm working in this area right here, you can see we have mass quantities of fruit that are right here. I know that in order for this nice piece of fruit to develop, it's gonna push right up against this branch, and that's a problem. So any fruit that I have that are facing in between these 2 branches, all of it's gonna have to go. one of the things I wanted to point out is whenever I'm looking at fruit, you can see I have a double here. So this is where we had two blossoms that were basically attached, and you had twins, conjoined twins. Now, these fruit, although they're kind of unique and they're cool looking, they're a big problem when it comes to fruit ripening, because we found that you have an issue with ripening of the fruit itself, and also the space between these two as it starts to fill in. You have essentially a issue with airflow in between the fruit. It has a tendency to mold, and eventually it becomes kind of infested with bugs, and it gets really nasty. So it's almost impossible for these double setting fruits to actually ripen, so I always remove these. And then of course we were talking again about the spacing between the branches. We were very clustered in here. There wasn't a tremendous amount of space. And again, these fruit need to be the size of baseballs. Pushing up against a branch is a problem. If you've had a very, very ripe peach, you know the skin itself is very thin. They're very, very dense with water, and it's very easy to pierce the skin. If they're pushing up against one of these branches and you get any air movement at all, it will break the skin and you've got a problem. So we're done with this particular tree. Now, there's still a few dozen fruit that are on this tree. Remember, this is a 2-year-old peach tree, so we don't need a tremendous amount of production, but we do definitely want some. I just wanted to give you guys an idea how much fruit we removed. Now, there's all different sizes in here. We've got little tiny guys like that, and we have a few that I know most of you would probably cringe seeing. That's about the diameter of a quarter. And there's a lot of those in there. So I'm gonna say we probably have about twice as much fruit on the ground as we do on the tree. So we're pruning about 60% or so. This is our first thinning, so we can always come back and remove additional fruit. And one of the things that I found is we have a tendency to do that. We think this is a lot, and then these fruits start to ripen, and we learn really quickly that we still have too much fruit on the tree. But this is definitely a good start. We have a branch here where we've got a span of fruit between my fingers here. Now, when I'm looking at these fruit, I want to make sure that I'm keeping a certain distance, and I'm looking for a span between my fingers. Usually what I do is kind of this hang loose thing here, and I'm looking for the space basically between my fingers here. So I'm looking at about 4 to 5 inches, maybe a little bit less. So first thing I want to do is get the spacing right. So far, between my first fruit here and these two fruit, I've got a pretty good space. Now, when I'm looking at these fruit and deciding if all of them are in good shape, what I want to do is I want to try to maintain fruit that are already hanging towards the ground so that we don't have a fruit trying to push up against gravity, and then that spacing that I was talking about. So I have enough space between this fruit here and this fruit here, so I'm going to lose this one right behind it. And then you may not be able to see it on camera, but I've got another fruit back here facing the opposite direction. That's too close to this fruit here, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. And then I have another one up on top that's facing up, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. And then I have 2 more pieces of fruit here. Now I can see sunlight penetrating back here on this fruit behind, and I have this one here that's very, very shaded. Both of them are pointing down, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove the one that's more shaded. The reason being, in order for these fruit to ripen, they need sunlight. Now I check my spacing. I've got space between my knuckles and just enough space between my knuckles there. So with these 3 fruit, I think I'm good on this branch. I want to point out something here that we're always looking at. Notice we got kind of a long leggy branch here. I have some fruit set down in here closer to the scaffold, so the main branch on this side. Then I have these 2 fruit that are hanging out here on the end. Now, if I keep either one of these fruit and it turns into a baseball, it's gonna pull this branch down. Now, I don't think that it's gonna break this particular branch. I think it is probably strong enough, but because there's a chance that it may, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna choose the fruit that's lower down towards the main branch and lose both of these. Okay, so we have about 3/4 of a 5-gallon bucket that's full of peaches about this size and smaller. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Dwayne, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and keep all those on the tree. The branches seem big enough that it'll support the weight of these, and I'd rather have hundreds of small peaches than, I don't know, several dozen larger peaches. Let me tell you a little story. So on our old farm, we had good neighbors of ours, and they had about a 5 or 6 year old Florida Prince peach tree. We were new in the peach game at the time. This was 2017, so we had a tree that was about 1.5 years old. We just got our first harvest off the tree. We had these beautiful baseball-sized Florida Prince peaches that taste amazing. I mean, just amazing, sweet, slightly tart taste. The juice was just gushing out of these peaches, and we were so impressed with the just the quality of the fruit and the size of the fruit. I had been told by a longtime peach farmer that you had to make sure you thin real heavy. You do a couple rounds of thinning, you're looking for those baseball-sized peaches, and man, was he right. So back to our neighbors. Our neighbors give us this bag. It was a small lunch bag, you know, those brown lunch bags that you would bring to school. It was completely full of peaches that were about this size, maybe slightly larger. Now, we tried a couple of these peaches having just had ours, and we were very unimpressed, we'll just say that, with the flavor of the peaches. They basically just tasted like water. They were juicy enough, but there was really no flavor at all. And the size of the pit compared to the amount of fruit, there just wasn't a whole lot of fruit in there. Now, we did have dozens of them in this bag, and yeah, we ate them all. But come to find out, that peach tree was a 5 to 6 year old Florida Prince peach tree, exactly the same of ours, that had never been thinned. And I can tell you, ever since then, I never doubted that you have to thin these out, because not only do you get better size, but the fruit quality is far superior if you do your thinning and you're diligent about it. I know a lot of people are nervous when it comes to thinning your trees. Peaches in particular have a tendency to just overproduce, much more than the tree itself can handle. That's not a bad thing, but it's up to us as the caretakers of that tree to make sure that you get the best quality of fruit, yes, and also taking care of the tree to make sure that it's not gonna harm itself, because we've lost branches off of trees and it's the last thing we wanna do. Oh, and by the way, those neighbors I was talking about who had the little baby peach trees, you can bet we were over there the following year showing them how to thin that tree. Every year since, they've had baseball-sized peaches, and they can't believe how amazing the fruit tastes. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. We cover a lot of things here on this newly establishing farm. Fruit tree is definitely a big part of that for us. Any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section down below. And our Amazon shop, will leave a link down in the description. That is a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with a link down below, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. That's a problem, because I know this branch can't support the weight of 4 fully grown Florida Prince peach trees that should be the size of a baseball or so.